obviously how old are you is out of the question, but somebody might ask, when did you go to college? Or they might ask, how long until you expect to retire? All of those things aren't allowed in interviews. They could be a way of classifying somebody by their age. Some of these questions can sometimes arise in the chit chat, right? When you're coming into the interview or leaving the interview and people are asking you about what do you do in your free time and do you have kids or do you have grandkids? Just be prepared with what you want to reveal in that. It's nice to have some informal conversation with the person to get to know them, but you don't want to give away anything, of course, that would be possibly detrimental to your ability to get that job. Step aside, don't directly answer it. Don't directly refuse to answer it. Just give an answer that steps aside. So, to the question, how long until you expect to retire, you could say something like, oh, I really expect to give a lot to my career. I still have many years of work that I hope to provide, to an employer, and keep it just a simple, sweet answer like that. It can be complicated because a lot of interviewers aren't necessarily trained in what's legal and not legal, particularly if it would be somebody in the business side, right? Somebody that you would be working with, one of the VPs or directors in the business. HR would be a little bit more concerned about it, but again, I would just step aside, answer the question in a way that doesn't directly respond to the question, that tries to classify you and move on.
Hello everyone. As you saw from our first video, we'll be discussing age discrimination in the workplace. My name is Jennifer Paiotti, and I am joined by my colleagues Cameron Riley, Emily RIECHMAN, and Justin Wilson. So what is discrimination? We've been learning about it a lot these last few weeks, but discrimination in a nutshell is the prejudicial treatment or consideration of a person, racial group, or minority based on category rather than the individual excluding or restricting members of people on the grounds of race, sex, age, or color. So when we were looking at age and ability, the first thing that popped in our mind in our brainstorming session was workplace discrimination. So workplace discrimination occurs when an employee or even a candidate's capacity to do the work is discounted because of irrelevant characteristics such as race, religion, gender, or age. There's many common types of workplace discrimination, and we see them in various forms throughout it. Race, sex, sexual preference, family or care responsibility, social origin, physical or mental disability, age, pregnancy, religion, political affiliation, marital status, or national extraction. But what is specifically age discrimination in the workplace? And this is where we really decided to take a really deep dive into looking at it. Age discrimination is the workplace where a person is treated less favorably than a person in a similar situation solely because of their age. It is based on a group or a class that the employees belong in rather than the employees' merit. So for instance, based on myself and my group mates, I am of those that are of the older stature. So let's say that Emily, Justin, Cameron, and I were all working in together. So I noticed that my coworkers or my group mates were receiving training on the new processes at work. I approached my supervisor, Professor Petro, and asking why I wasn't included. Well, Professor Petro lets me know that I'm getting a little bit old to learn the new systems, and I should probably stick with what I know. That is a common age discrimination in the workplace. But the interesting thing is we really started to dive into it. And from my own personal reflection, now that I am of that classified under Protection Act, is that leading at young, for the young age, has become one of the most discriminated classes. So age discrimination, while we actually bias age discrimination by thinking that it's only older people, it can happen at any age. And age discrimination against those under 30 are happening more and more in the workplace. And that is because millennials and Gen Zs are now becoming into the workplace. And millennials are starting to take a leadership role. I work with many undergraduate students and many graduate students, and we're seeing that more and more, that as the millennial generation that are coming up into the workplace in that 28 to 35 range are starting to become managers and leaders. They're actually becoming discriminated because we still have 5 generations in the workplace. And there are still boomers that are out there and Gen Xers that are starting to get ready to go into that early retirement phase. So we're seeing this huge generational gap. And I found it really fascinating from a personal level. But unlike those classified, like myself, under the Protection Act, people under 40 are not protected by law for discrimination. So those that are under 40 that are coming into leadership and that are being discriminated against for promotions, they're not protected. And I really, truly believe that's wrong. The other thing that I found as I'm getting older this year is that there people that are in the older generation are not being hired because they're too old. So age discrimination is illegal during any part of the hiring process, especially for those over 40. Hiring, promotions, raises, layoffs. There was an interesting movie that I watched in one of my previous classes. And it was called The Blue Ocean, and where they decided that they had to immediately start layoffs. And you can see this during now in COVID-19, where we're seeing furloughs. How many of those furloughs were based on age? You know, how many of those were looking at voluntary opt-out opportunities, and they really pushed it to those that maybe a couple of years away from retirement? Or we're looking at furloughs, so we're going to take that, instead of the young people that we're hoping to have longevity, we're going to furlough the older generation first. That's age discrimination. And in 2009, the U.S. Supreme Court made a ruling that made it difficult for companies to prevail in court over age discrimination lawsuits. And we can see that here in this video.
Now, finding a job is tough for most people, but what if no one seems to be willing to hire you? And you are convinced it has nothing to do with your resume, skills, and experience. My next guest, Elizabeth, says even with a law degree, she hasn't been able to find a job. Why? She says it's all about her age. Take a look.
I never imagined at 59 years old I'd have difficulty finding work. I've been a paralegal for 5 years. I decided to go to law school because I wanted to make something of my life. When I started law school, I had to make a decision. You can't work full-time, go to school, and raise a family. I quit my job and went to school full-time. After law school, I sent my resume to law firms that they didn't respond at all. If I did get an interview, the minute I walked into the office, I knew I didn't have it. I had one person make fun of my clothes. I started to broaden my search. I am frustrated that I put in so much time and effort into getting a law degree, but I am never going to stop trying. Ever.
Well, Elizabeth is joining me along with AARP's Vice President of Work and Jobs, Susan Weinstock. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, at 59 years old, I think I can remember 59, tell me what happens when you do apply for a job.
Well, I only apply for a job that I'm well qualified for.
Right.
If I hear back from the employer, the phone interview goes well, and I go into that meeting, and I walk through that door, they can see that I'm not 30, and I never hear from them again.
After years of employment rejects, how does it wind up making you feel?
It's devastating. It's devastating. I wish I'd never gotten a law degree. I took out student loans in the amount of $194,000.
There are 4 different types of age discrimination. The first type is direct, which is poor treatment compared to someone else based on a person's age. The second type is indirect age discrimination, which can be policies or rules that disadvantage a specific age group. Harassment is the third type, and this is degradation or embarrassment due to one's age. Finally, victimization is poor treatment due to filing a complaint against age discrimination. Sharon McKinney created an exercise in our textbook that helps understand ageism and explore personal feelings toward it, and it's called, How Old Should You Be to Drive a Bus? For this exercise, you are asked to write down or think about the age that you feel is appropriate for the following life events, and then give a brief explanation or justification for each selection. Consider how old you think someone should be to live alone, drive a bus, have a baby, retire from work, get married, vote in state elections, start formal schooling, start your own business, manage a department of 50 employees, serve in the armed forces, or fly a commercial airplane. All of these events have potential age restrictions in people's minds, so it is important to consider our own personal feelings toward age through this exercise. Age discrimination is a unique form of discrimination because almost every person will eventually become susceptible to it. This video helps explore the fight against age discrimination in further depth. This video shows how age is just a number and it should not hold anyone back from their career or from their life. The Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 was implemented in order to protect all applicants and employees ages 40 and over from discrimination based on age. This discrimination can be seen in many different areas of work, including the hiring process, discharging, promotion, compensation, job assignment, training, or the terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. To go further into depth on this Age Discrimination of Employment Act, it applies to all employers with 20 or more employees. It is enforced by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The Older Workers Benefit Protection Act of 1990 works with the ADEA in order to help protect the benefits of these older workers. Victims of age discrimination in the workplace may be entitled to back pay, reinstatement, promotion, paid court costs and attorney fees, and liquidated damages if they can prove that this age discrimination did occur in the workplace.
Hey guys, this is Cameron Riley. I'm going to talk a little bit about the advantages and the disadvantages of the ADEA, the Age Discrimination Employment Act. Right off the bat, it helps combat common stereotypes about age in the workplace that hiring managers may fall victim to. One example is this idea that as you grow older, your ability to perform decreases as your age increases. While this can probably be argued in some more physical occupations, there's really no data that would suggest this is true in numerous other jobs or occupations. The ADEA, another benefit is that it also discourages companies from hiring based on just potential. What I mean by that is that more and more companies seem to want to hire younger employees who may be cheaper, less experienced, and someone that they can kind of mold into their own creation. There seems to be more and more value being placed on youth than experience. An example of this is the phenomenon that's happening with the NBA draft, which I will talk about here in a little bit. Another advantage is that the act attempts to give older workers an equal chance at employment. In America now, the average age of retirement is steadily increasing, which means that now more than ever, people of older ages are looking for employment more than they ever have before. Only about 10% of people aged 65 to 69 are actually employed in the United States. which again goes back to that idea that organizations more and more are looking for youth and younger employees who can potentially stay at the company a long time, and or are more impressionable than people who are experienced, who may have experience outside of that organization. Lastly, one of the best things about the ADEA is how it is reverse applicable. Not only does it protect against discrimination against people who are more experienced or people who are a little older, it actually works in reverse in that it can protect people against favoritism toward more experienced employees as well. There's numerous examples of lawsuits that involved management kind of almost protecting or supporting their employees more than others based on how long they had been with the company. So going back to my example about the NBA and the criticism they face on a couple fronts as it pertains to age discrimination. The first one is what I mentioned before, is that this growing thought that teams that are selecting athletes out of college are now valuing overall potential higher than they are past experience or your accomplishments in college. Over the last 15 years, we've seen a surprising number of student athletes get drafted at age 19 and 20 as opposed to being college juniors and seniors. Nowadays, if you're 21 or 22, a lot of these teams are looking at you as quote unquote too old, to that being older would knock you down their ranking of where they think you should be chosen. On the flip side of that, the NBA also has an age restriction policy that says that student athletes have to be 19 years old when they enter the league. What this does is forces a lot of the athletes to kind of faces some of the top athletes to spend one meaningless year playing college basketball, knowing that they're going to get chosen to play professionally 1 year removed from high school. And I guess the thought there is that, in America, people can vote, they can purchase a firearm, they can fight in war at age 18, but they're not allowed to play pro basketball in America, which is kind of a super controversial topic right now. I actually have a video that talks about that a little more.
Season. The NBA has an age limit. You got to be 19. You have to be a year out of high school to go to the NBA. But is this something, Dino, that we need to revisit maybe?
I really think we need to revisit it. I think if kids want to come out of high school and go to the NBA, we should let them go. The face of the NBA, Kobe, LeBron, Kevin Garnett, Dwight Howard, none of those guys went to high school. But if they go to college, I think they should stay 3 years. It gives a little bit of structure and organization at the collegiate level. The NBA would never tolerate free agency every year, and that's what the colleges are going through right now. Guys can leave when they want. Guys could transfer when they want, Dave. I just think there needs to be more structure. What's best for basketball overall?
I got what I call the Switzerland plan. I want a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I want to stay kind of neutral. I think you should be able to go out of high school. I think that, LeBron James didn't have any business playing college basketball. Neither did Garnett and those guys. But I also believe that you owe a little bit to the college game to invest in it, give it 2 years, invest in the personality of your school, become a more mature player, and then on the backside, you become a better NBA player early on in your career.
Yeah, I don't think you owe anything to anybody. I think if you're 18 years old and you're in high school, you go. If you're after your first year, you go. Your second year, you go. I understand for the NBA, it'd be great if guys stayed 3 years.
So you see there, just a little bit of conversation back and forth about the advantages and disadvantages.
Guys, Britt Johnson here. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. Make sure you click subscribe.
Get rid of that there. So yeah, just a little bit of the potential problems that the NBA is dealing with. Looking at age discrimination. Here. All right, so there are also a couple of disadvantages to this act that I think have developed over time. Number one being just the overall cost to employers. age discrimination lawsuits can be really expensive and crippling to smaller businesses. The average cost of one age discrimination lawsuit could be $200,000, which obviously is a lot for small businesses to be able to manage. Also, it's very hard for a plaintiff to prove age discrimination has occurred, given the tough regulations that the court makes you follow in order to prove discrimination based on age. And then lastly, really savvy HR management groups and HR offices are really good at trying to protect companies against discrimination based on age, even if there's a chance that it exists. There's ways they can word documents and policies and contracts and things like that, which would also make it very hard to prove when it comes to the court.
Preventing age agility discrimination. So how does an organization go about addressing this issue? I'm going to go through 3 different roles and describe how each role should address this issue. And first, I'm going to start with an example. So maybe towards the end of someone's career, they may feel like they're not receiving the same opportunities or training as a younger worker is receiving. They feel like they're being passed over on projects. Their input isn't as valued. They're becoming more of an observer than a doer. And most of the time, this is going to cause resentment. They feel like they have more to give to an organization. They still want to teach. They still want to learn. They may not be close to retirement. So as a leader within an organization, what's their role in addressing this issue? So first, leaders should be aware that there is older workers within their organization that feel this way. And they should probably show empathy towards these people, address it within the culture, set the tone, and then set the tone on how it should be executed on addressing this issue and how it should be handled. They should offer the same opportunities and training and professional development as the younger workers are receiving. This will make them feel included, and this will make them work hand in hand with those younger workers again. And then as a manager, how does a manager address this issue? So as a manager, they should probably be aware of their own biases towards older workers or people that can't handle the same amount of work as they've done in the past. So address those stereotypes within themselves and then be aware of them. How to give them the same opportunity as younger workers. As managers become younger, they're going to probably look for younger individuals or people with the same experience as they have and give them the opportunities or give them the job. Be aware of that. A survey said that older and younger managers tend to rate older workers lower, and that's just by stereotypes. They tend to think that they have nothing more to give in an organization, and it may not be the case. So as a manager, be aware of their own biases. And then as an employee, employees need to be aware of the culture, how the culture treats older workers. Be aware if some older workers are not given the same opportunities as they are, and give them the same treatment as they would anyone else. And if they aren't, tell leadership, tell the managers, address the issue. Make sure that an older worker doesn't get left behind. So I'm going to go over my personal viewpoint of ageism and how I look at that. And I picked this picture here because I think it best describes how I work with and treat older workers within my own organization. And when I first got there at my job, I didn't know anything about the job. I didn't know anything about the organization. I was thrown in, but I was given a mentor. And that mentor I had was there and is still there. He has a track record or a career of being there for 35 years. So he had a lot to offer. And usually going into a new situation, I tend to ask more questions and learn about the current method before I go questioning or trying to change the status quo. And this has been proven very beneficial to me. I've been able to gain all the experience and knowledge that he had and still going on to this day. And not only that, he's been able to offer advice, direction, motivation, and support. We've been able to transfer knowledge from one another. And there's a lot of things that's been lost over the years due to that lack of knowledge transfer. Some of the things that I work on is almost considered tribal knowledge, and that only some people know, and it is passed on generation to generation. So some people may see that as entitlement or seniority. I see that as opportunity and mentorship, and it kind of works both ways. Once I get to a certain level, I'm able to challenge not only him but others on the subject and the status quo, and always trying to improve upon our processes. And that's created somewhat of a good work environment. It makes coming to work exciting. Just because he's been there for 35 years doesn't mean he enjoys not coming in anymore, even though he's doing somewhat of the same thing. So just because someone is aging doesn't mean they don't have anything to offer. And if they do have a sense of entitlement, I encourage people to break through that and try to seek mentorship and the knowledge that they have. So I provided a video here that goes through a CEO, I think, and he has a great message on how he treats younger generations and how they should probably treat this situation. So in conclusion, yes, agility and age discrimination exists. There are laws in place that do try to protect those individuals, but they're not always protected. And a lot of that has to do with the factors with their own culture, country, institution, and interpersonal interactions. Ageism and agility is mostly a relative term. Not all old people see themselves as old, and sometimes young people see old people as very old or not as old. So since this is a relative term, people have to treat others with respect and see everyone as equals. This could help eradicate ageism and inability for generations to come, but mostly people should not label the elderly or those who are disabled. We can't put an expiration date on these people. Eventually all young people will become old, and we will have to be treated the same.